Violators, thank you for your love and support. I appreciate you all. The political landscape of West Africa is shaking to its foundation today. We are standing at a historic crossroads where the old rules of power are being ripped apart. For decades, political power on our continent has moved in only one direction. When a leader enters the presidential palace, they immediately lock the gates behind them. They use their power to expand their authority and erase their term limits, like we saw in Cote d'Ivoire. But right now, in the Republic of Senegal, a completely different script is playing out. On Monday, the National Assembly of Senegal did something that shocked the region. The parliament voted with an overwhelming majority to pass a massive constitutional reform. But this reform does not give the president more power. It does the exact opposite. It strips away the core authorities of the president and divides their power. The political atmosphere inside the capital of Dhaka has turned explosive. This is a dirty, bare, knuckle institutional war. As lawmakers gathered to vote, the tension inside the building reached a boiling point. One opposition member tried to stop the process by blocking the speaker's podium. The situation generated so fast that armed police had to physically drag him out. In protest, the entire opposition bloc stood up and walked out of the building. Outside on the streets, the chaos was even worse. Protesters tried to storm the National Assembly. They threw heavy stones at the security forces and chanted for the Constitution. The police had to fire rounds of tear gas into the crowds to beat them back. But just as the dust was settling, the Justice Minister delivered a shocking message. He announced that President Bassirou Diomaye Faye will put his new constitution to a national referendum. Think about the weight of that choice. In a continent where strong men use every trick to avoid asking the public what they want, Senegal is doing the opposite. The president is taking a document that strips his own power and handing it to the citizens to vote on. But beneath the surface lies a bitter personal war between two men who used to be closer than brothers. To understand why Senegal is shaking today, we have to look back to the 2024 election. We have to look at the incredible bond between Bassirou Diomaye Faye and Ousmane Sonko. For years, Ousmane Sonko was the firing face of the Senegalese opposition. The old administrative saw Sonko as an existential threat and threw him in prison. They disqualified him from running in the 2024 presidential election. But from his prison cell, Sonko made a historic decision. He told his millions of supporters to throw all their support behind his strategist Faye. They ran a campaign under a famous slogan, Diomaye is Sonko. Faye swept into the presidential palace in a historic victory. His very first act was to appoint his mentor, Ousmane Sonko, as his prime minister. For a brief moment, it looked like the perfect partnership. If you are new here, you are welcome. Please subscribe. But executive power does not like to be shared between two masters. So, slowly, deep cracks began to form within the executive mansion. The long road of disagreements eventually led to a total and permanent rupture. On the 22nd of May, President Bassirou Diomaye Faye suddenly dismissed Sonko from his position as the prime minister and dissolved the cabinet. The alliance was dead, the friendship was over, and the war began. But Sonko did not retreat to the shadows. He weaponized the overwhelming parliamentary majority of his party. Just 4 days after being fired by the President Ousmane, Sonko was elected as the new Speaker of the National Assembly. The man who was kicked out of the executive branch was suddenly in the second highest office in the country. He was now sitting on the top of the chamber that writes the laws and controls the budget. To make the separation final, Sonko's party refused to take any positions in the president's new cabinet. President Faye tried to find a way out of this chokehold, but his hands are tied by law. He cannot dissolve this hostile parliament until around December of this year. Until that clock runs out, these two men are trapped in an institutional deadlock. One controls the presidency, while the other controls the votes in the parliament. Let us look at the raw mechanisms of how this reform strips power from the presidency. The first major change is a direct attack on the traditional layout of African strong men. The new law states that the sitting president can no longer serve as the leader of any political party. By cutting this link, this reform separates the office of the state from the machinery of politics. If the president is no longer the party boss, he loses the power to dictate how the lawmakers behave. The second major change strikes at how the nation is directed day to day. Before, the president alone designed the National Development Program. Now, the Constitution forced the president to draft national policy only in direct consultation with the prime minister. It upgrades the prime minister into an equal co-pilot. The third change places a heavy load on the president's power to dissolve parliament. This reform builds massive legal walls around that authority, so it cannot be used as a weapon. Finally, they are completely dismantling the highest legal authority in the land. They are replacing the old 7-member Constitutional Council with a brand new Constitutional Court of 9 judges. When you stack these changes together, the intent becomes crystal clear. This is a systematic siege designed to box the president inside a very small room. But this crisis is not a game of thrones. There is an economic time bomb ticking underneath. When President Faye and Sonko took over the government, They ordered a complete audit of the nation's finances. They discovered that the previous regime had hidden over $7 billion in massive debts from the public. When the International Monetary Fund found out, they immediately froze a crucial $1.8 billion assistance program. This pushed Senegal into a severe liquidity crisis, with national debt sitting at 130% of the GDP. Right now, an official IMF delegation is conducting intense negotiation behind closed doors in the country. And this economic crisis is the exact fault line that split the two men apart. President Faye is a pragmatist who is willing to sign an IMF deal to save the economy from default. But Ousmane Sonko rejects the IMF completely on principles of national sovereignty. He argues that IMF programs are a form of financial colonization that forces African nations to surrender independence. Now, look at how the new constitutional reform turns this into a total trap for the president. Under the new laws, any major foreign loan or financial agreement must be ratified by the parliament floor. This means if the president Faye signs a deal with the IMF, that deal is completely dead unless it passes through parliament. The man who ideologically opposed the IMF now holds the absolute legislative power to veto the president's financial plans. To appreciate the historic nature of this moment, we must look at the broader landscape of Africa today. When you scan the continent, you see a deeply concerning trend of democratic backsliding. In Zimbabwe, the ruling party is moving fast to extend the president's rule all the way to 2030. They are even eliminating the right of the ordinary citizens to cast a ballot for head of state in the future. They are fast-tracking this law specifically to avoid a national referendum because they fear the people's vote. In Togo, the regime recently rewrote their constitution to take the direct vote away from the citizens entirely. In the Democratic Republic of Congo, a new bill seeks to reset the president's term clock back to zero so he can run again. In all those places, leaders are manipulating the text to grab more power and push the citizens away. But in Senegal, the parliament passes a law that reduces executive power and hands the final choice to a public referendum. The contrast could not be more stark. While multiple nations are marching backwards, Senegal is trusting its own citizens with the final answer. Yes, the process in Dakar is loud and messy, but a loud struggle is the sound of a living democracy. Senegal currently holds the rotating presidency of the ECOWAS Commission all the way to 2030. How Senegal navigates this internal crisis will send a powerful signal to the entire region. Is this reform a genuine attempt to create checks imbalances, or is it merely political revenge by Ousmane Sonko? And most importantly, who is truly running the Republic of Senegal right now? Is it the man in the presidential palace or the man holding the legislative authority in parliament? Leave your raw, honest thoughts on this political showdown in the comment section. And if you are new here, you are welcome. Please subscribe, hit the notification bell and select all. I love you for always choosing the latest, and all those who are supporting, liking, commenting, I appreciate all of you. So that's the latest around the world, in Africa, West Africa, and in Senegal.